A chance to chat with T.J. English. He's a noted journalist, screenwriter, author of the New York Times bestsellers, Havana Nocturne, Patty Whack, Savage City, as well as The Westies, a national bestseller. Born to Kill, nominated for an Edgar Award. He's written for, well, everybody. Vanity Fair, Esquire, Playboy, among others. Wrote for NYPD Blue and Homicide. Lives in New York. He's got a new book out you're going to want to check out. It's called Where the Bodies Are Buried, Whitey Bulger and the World That Made Him. And it's coming out at an interesting time because a movie about Whitey Bulger is just days away from being released as well. So let's go right over to the phones. TJ, good morning to you.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
We're doing really well. Thanks for taking time to be on with us this morning.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Looking forward to really digging into this book because the research that you have done, there's been a whole bunch of different books about Whitey Bulger, but from people that I've read who've had a look at your book and just looking it over, yours appears to be the definitive, comprehensive look because, well, you've written on this topic extensively. You sat through the entire trial. You're going to give us a look at things that maybe a lot of other people didn't see.
Yeah, I've been on this story for a long time. Whitey Bulger was a prominent gangster in New England from about 75 to 95, and then he was tipped off by someone in law enforcement that they were going to arrest him, and he went on the run, and he was on the run for 16 years from 95 to 2011 when he was apprehended in Santa Monica, California with his girlfriend, and an 81-year-old man by the time he was arrested. So the story had legs, so to speak. I mean, the fact that Bulger was on the run for so long kept the story in the public eye, and it really wasn't until he went on the run that a lot of the true facts of his criminal career started to emerge. And so I wrote about Bulger in the book Patty Whack, which was a history of the Irish-American gangster. In fact, when they apprehended Bulger in Santa Monica, that book was among his books that they confiscated in his apartment in Santa Monica. So he was a guy he was a reader. He was known to be a reader of books, but he also was a guy who kept up on his public image and took a vested interest in how he was presented and portrayed in the public eye.
T.J. English with us, his new book, Where the Bodies Were Buried. For people who aren't completely up on the story, T.J., Whitey Bulger, they might know the name, they might know was the #1 fugitive on the 10 most wanted list, but what exactly put him at #1 on the 10 most wanted list?
He was sort of an old-style gangster that you would associate with the 1920s and 30s, but here he was still in power well into the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, and his base of operation was basically racketeering. He was into narcotics, extortion, making money in all the ways that gangsters make money, and he was very successful at it. He had a few characteristics that gave him an edge, one of them being that his brother was arguably the most powerful politician in the state. He was the president of the state senate in Massachusetts during the years that Bulger was in power. And the most crucial aspect of his power was that, and we didn't know this until decades after he was on the run, was that he had been secretly been an informant for the FBI. So he was giving them information about his rivals, the mafia, and in exchange the FBI and really the entire criminal justice system to an extent was protecting him and enabling him and keeping him out on the street to commit his crimes and to commit murders while he was in this relationship as an informant with the FBI. So he's a fascinating character. There's so many layers to the story of Whitey Bulger. What I try to do in this book, in a way, is move the discussion beyond Bulger the personality into answering the question, how did this guy ever get into this position of power in the first place? And the answer to that question has to do with corruption in the system that was deeply rooted and had gone back decades before Bulger was even in power. It has to do with the FBI and the use of the top echelon, the use or misuse of the top echelon informant program.
The book is Where the Bodies Were Buried, Whitey Bulger and the World That Made Him. Author T.J. English on the line with us right now. And now, as you sat there and watched this trial, I noticed that you made comment on the fact that the prosecution really worked hard. So a lot of the stuff that you had just mentioned, the dealings with the FBI, Department of Justice, and all that, that really didn't come out in torrents, but more in drips.
Yes. The prosecutors had a difficult task. They wanted to prosecute Bulger, and that was the easy part. There was a lot of evidence that had built up against him over the years. And so there was a foregone conclusion that Bulger was going to be found guilty of enough crimes to put him away. I mean, by the time he got to trial, he was 83 years old. It wasn't going to take much to get him a sentence that would put him away for life. The sentence that he got was 2 life sentences plus 75 years, and deservedly so. But during that trial, the government spent a lot of time trying to make sure that the narrative of Whitey Bulger didn't spill over into these other areas of how he was enabled by the system and his relationship, not only with the FBI, and I can't emphasize that enough, because the FBI has been designated in the Whitey Bulger story as the bad guys, and they are guilty here of an incredible misuse of power and corruption. But this top echelon informant program was policy, and it was authorized, all the way up the chain of command to Washington, D.C. and the Department of Justice. And at various times in Bulger's career, when he was out there committing murders, he and his partner, Steve Fleming, who was also an informant, top echelon informant, both of them were, while they were out there murdering people and committing crimes, this was being brought to the attention of people within the system. And they could have shut him down, and they should have shut him down. But they not only didn't shut him down, they covered for him. They sabotaged attempted investigations on the part of other law enforcement agencies to take him down. And so he had the system working on his behalf. And I try to get into the roots of that, or explore the roots of that in this book, because that really is the secret to understanding how Bulger derived his power and stayed in power.
Author T.J. English with us, Where the Bodies Were Buried, his book, Whitey Bulger in the World That Made Him. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. As you said, you focus more on the question of how he got into a position of power in the first place than on the personality, I guess. But when you look at Whitey Bulger and the circumstances that led to his acquiring the power and the control, was it because of who he was? I mean, was it because of a personality that was a power-hungry type personality, that he was always the kind of guy that was going to rise to the top? Or how did this kind of roll through the years?
Yeah, some of that, everything you said is an aspect of it. He was he had a lot of self-discipline. He had some impressive leadership skills that work in his favor. But the biggest thing that worked in his favor is, even before Bulger came along, that jurisdiction in New England had been using informants as a way to try to make cases against the mafia. And then they had, all the way back to the late 1960s, when J. Edgar Hoover first instituted the top echelon informant program, they had a series of informants that they had used and misused that were precursors to the Bulger situation. And this had never been brought to public light. So when Bulger came along, he was really plugging into a pre-existing system of federal law enforcement using the most murderous type of gangsters, the worst of the bunch, to try to make cases and then to protect these informants. There was one named Joe Barboza, who was an informant in the late 1960s in New England. He took the stand and testified in various trials, and they were so determined to protect his credibility as an informant that they allowed Joe Barboza to take the stand in a murder case and finger 4 innocent people for a murder they didn't commit. And those people went off to prison for life and spent the next 30 years in jail before it was revealed that this travesty of justice had taken place. And it had taken place with the full acquiescence of people in the system who had covered for Barboza. And it's a terrible scandal, as it's almost hard to believe. And nothing was ever known about it until Bulger went on the run, and some of this information started to come out in the late 1990s. So Whitey Bulger was very aware of this history, and he knew that by becoming an informant, he would have the protection of the system in a way, and he was able to manipulate his handler, an FBI agent named John Connolly, who was from the same neighborhood as him, South Boston. They had a personal relationship, and he was able to manipulate Connolly, and Connolly was able to manipulate the system, and that's how Bulger kept himself out there on the street all these years. And I also can't emphasize enough what a homicidal sociopath Bulger was. He was eventually charged with 19 murders. Some of these murders were business related, but he was able to get away with murders for so long while he was out there because he was being covered for by the FBI that I think he got delusions of grandeur, and some of these murders really had nothing to do with business. They strangled to death the ex-girlfriend of his partner. They were afraid she might talk about them. They killed another woman who was the niece of his ex-partner. I mean, some of the crimes are really horrific, and as I say, had nothing to do with criminal business, just had to do with a couple of criminals who had reached such a level of power and control of the system that they thought and they believed that they could get away with anything because they did for a very long period of time.
It's got to blow you away, TJ, to see that one of your books found in his apartment when he was captured, paddywhacked, sitting there on the shelf. As an author, and I would have no idea what the sensation would be. Well, what does that feel like to you when you found that out?
Well, I had heard, I interviewed a woman named Teresa Stanley, who was his common-law wife for 30 years, who lived with him for 30 years while he was in power. And when he went on the run, he took his mistress instead of her. And she was okay with that at the time because she had 4 children and really wasn't cut out for a life on the run. So she had made the choice to stay behind when he went on the run. And she eventually faced possible charges, but she was pretty much knew very little. Perhaps maybe she was in denial and only knew what she wanted to know about her boyfriend. But anyway, I interviewed her a few years ago, and she was the one who first told me that he was fascinated with another book that I wrote called The Westies, which was about an Irish-American gang here in New York City where I live. And he used to read that book over and over again, and she used to try to get him to come to bed late at night, and he would be up reading that book. He was fascinated with the lore and the history of organized crime. He saw it as his business and his way of life, so he educated himself about it. The funny thing about Bulger is he had a lot of characteristics and the level of intelligence that probably would have stood him well if he had chosen some sort of mainstream career for himself, but he chose crime. The reading of the books, I don't know. I mean, in a way it's flattering because I write these books and I try to have a level of authenticity in these books, and if someone like Bulger, who's a professional criminal, sees value in the book, then it must mean that I have something in there that's authentic and true to the subject matter that I'm writing about. So I tend to try to look at it that way.
Oh, I would too. Yeah, as a compliment. Now, are you gonna be in the audience at any time to see the new Johnny Depp movie Black Mass?
I'll see it. I'll see it along with everyone else. It's getting a lot of tremendous pre-publicity, and supposedly he gives a terrific performance. I have mixed feelings about it. One of the problems with the Bulger books, all the books, and there's been many that have been written over the years, they tend to get caught up in the cult of Bulger, the personality of Whitey. They become fascinated with the personality of Whitey because he is an interesting character and a fascinating personality. But the real scandal to me is the framework that made it possible for Bulger to acquire his power, and that has to do with a lot of deep-rooted corruption within the system that has mostly gone unexamined in relation to the Bulger story. And so I fear that the movie will, we should be talking about corruption within the system and how that enabled Bulger. What most people are going to be talking about probably is, how authentic Johnny Depp's Boston accent was, and they'll become fascinated with the details of Whitey. So anyway, that's hopefully why the book is out there, so that people who have their curiosity piqued by the movie and want to know more about the more complete story of Bulger have the book as an option.
You're going to want to grab this book, Where the Bodies Were Buried, Whitey Bulger and the World That Made Him. TJ English is the author, and when you're done with that one, grab TJ's other books. I think you're going to love those as well. TJ, thanks a lot for taking time out of your day for us. Much success with the book.
Thanks, guys. I appreciated it.